Hello and welcome to Grow Conversations, your window into the world of medical cannabis here in the United Kingdom. My name's Alex Fraser, and here on this second episode of 2024, we have Shauna Levy. Shauna is founder and CEO, I believe, of Madge and Mercer, a medical cannabis brand from Canada. Welcome to the show, Shauna. Sorry about that. And how are you doing today? And whereabouts in Canada are you?
Alex, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm located about 2.5 hours north of Toronto in an area called the Blue Mountains, and there's a winter wonderland right outside of my window right now.
Oh, lovely, very nice. We're very hopeful that winter is out of the way here in the UK. It's been lovely and sunny here today, so I hope it's not too cold, and I hope you're enjoying the snow. But thank you so much for sparing some time to be with us today. Be here with us today. I'm very excited to get into a whole host of topics around, what you do in medical cannabis. But I think what we generally like to do is we like to get a bit of a timeline. We like to go before cannabis. We like to go BC and ask you, what were you doing before you were doing anything in cannabis?
Yeah, so I spent about 25 years in the design industry in Canada. So what I mean by that is I'm not a designer, but I founded the Interior Design Show, which is North America's largest design fair. You have, for example, in the UK, in London, you have London Design Week, and you have 100% design. So it's a very similar kind of concept. I sold it to a US-based company and continued to grow it for them, acquiring new shows in art, lifestyle, design. And then I was approached by a design museum in Toronto to be their CEO and to lead them on a path of making it more accessible to a broad demographic. So bringing on exhibitions and keynotes and education programs that really spoke about how design is relevant to everyday living and how it can touch you in so many different ways. And that design isn't just about making things pretty, but it really is, it has a functional purpose to it as well. So I worked with people like Pharrell Williams and Christian Louboutin. Actually, the exhibition we did with Christian came from Design Museum London, which is also a fantastic museum. And I also worked with the UN on a big design festival, looking at how design can make the world a better place. So really, really getting into making design accessible to a broader demographic.
Amazing. It's always fascinating to me to see how people's careers have moved, and one might not assume that there's a lot of crossover between the world of design and the world of medical cannabis, but just from what you're saying there, the education side of things, bettering communities, there's clearly, areas that you'll have, or areas of expertise that you'll have been using in design that I'm sure we can talk about more in the scope of medical cannabis. But I suppose the question is, how the hell did you end up in the world of medical cannabis from design? How did that happen? And perhaps a little bit more about because I know there's some personal reasons behind this. You'd be happy to tell us a bit about that. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because, at this point in my career, people often ask me, like, how did you manage it? And like, people often think that your career path is planned. And I think that often it's not planned. When you look back, it all makes sense and it all works together. But I can't say that, it's necessarily planned up front. Having said that, while I was in my position at the Design Exchange, I had a lot of stress and anxiety associated with my position, raising money, getting donors, lobbying government for funds because we were a not-for-profit charity. And so on and off planes every day and really, running nonstop. And as a result of that, not sleeping well, not taking care of myself, and really pushing myself beyond what I probably should have been. And during that period, I developed a chronic pain condition. And at first it started kind of small and I didn't really give it enough attention. And then it just started to increasingly build until it got to a point where it was quite debilitating. And it is a chronic pelvic pain condition. And I saw a multitude of doctors, every kind of doctor you can imagine that touches that part of your body, from urogynecologists to gynos to GIs and so forth. And no one could really help me. No one could figure out what was causing that pain. And I tried absolutely everything. You name it, I tried it, from magnet therapy, which I can talk about another time, all the way to, opioids. So, and nothing actually helped me. Nothing helped me manage the pain. And in fact, in the case of opioids, the side effects made the condition even worse. So I was pretty helpless. And someone at that point suggested I try medical cannabis. And I was not a pot smoker. I, dabbled in weed when I was, in university, very briefly. I was like super paranoid. I was not a good pot smoker. And so I was really, not really, I was scared. There was stigma, there was fear, there was lack of knowledge. And finally I decided I owed it to myself to try it. And I went to see a cannabis doctor. In Canada, you go to a cannabis clinic, and then the doctor prescribes a prescription for you, and then you can access the product from a website, a producer's website. Anyway, it took a while until I found the right product and the right dosage and formulation. But once I did,
Mm-hmm.
that was it. I was convinced, and I was able to get off the floor, put my hot water bottle away, and I was able to function again. It didn't cure me, but it allowed me to manage my pain in such a way that I was able to function normally. So that was my access to cannabis. Question, or should I continue?
No, I mean that's I mean it's a narrative I've heard so many times from so many, again, often women, often people who've been very active, whether that's professionally, whether in sports, or just in their early life, and then something befalls them, something that causes them this intense pain. They can't work out what's wrong with them. Often the diagnosis takes a long time, and then they try a host of medicines that don't work. Yeah, I mean, I was going to dig into this later. I would do this every episode. I'm like, I'm going to jump ahead like 3 topics. Do you think the general understanding about women's health, is that a problem? Do you think that there's something for the healthcare profession there where they're not dealing with particular health issues, particularly around women's health, that well enough, and that is why, from my position, obviously dealing with medical cannabis patients, I keep hearing this over and over again. Do you think there's a wide problem with that? Do you think that's something that there's a small number of people, and just because it's such a problem, we're hearing these stories, or do you think it's something more systemic, I suppose?
Well, let's, if I may, let's reframe that question to, rather than is there a problem, is there an opportunity? Is there an opportunity for us to start looking at women's health in a different way? And the answer I have is yes. The challenge is that, I believe the challenge is that, I was speaking about this earlier, that women's anatomy is really complex. I mean, when you look at a model of a woman's pelvic region, there are so many organs, there are so many things, there are so many functions happening together, and everything is just crushed together. And so I can understand that it could be complex and challenging for a doctor to understand what's going on. But where I think the opportunity is to really look at women's health in a more holistic or integrative kind of way, because we can't be looking at each of these functions in silos. We have to really be looking at how all these systems and all these organs and all these details in your body work together to cause challenges. And my feeling is that there just hasn't been enough emphasis on that within the medical education system. And as a result, there aren't many doctors who really can take the time to understand how to work through that. So yes, there's definitely a lack of knowledge and a huge frustration. I mean, as I said earlier, and as you've said, I mean, I went to, I would say, probably 12.5 doctors I saw over a period of several years. I left every appointment in tears, and because no one understood me, and at worst, they dismissed me and thought that it was just in my head. And the irony of that is that chronic pain is in your head. It originates in your head. So we got to look at the head. We can't just look at the pelvis and say, here's some medication, here's some lotion. Like, we have to tie it back to what's happening in your head. I think the other challenge is that, or opportunity, is that doctors prescribe traditional medicine. And for a lot of women's health issues or the symptoms that they experience can't really be addressed by traditional medicine. And so you see women often are very open to trying alternative strategies and different types of supplements and vitamins and different approaches. And so I think that's where there's an opportunity as well for medical cannabis, because there is this willingness to go beyond the
feel that
medical
yourself, and
system, because the medical system just hasn't really helped. And so this is a way to, another way to explore in terms of addressing their symptoms.
Yeah, yeah. Did you yourself explore lots of, like, the, quote unquote alternatives before you found cannabis?
Oh my God, did I ever? I was mentioning magnet therapy, which is this crazy thing where you lie on a bed on a magnetic sheet, and then this woman places all these magnets all over your body, these like humongous magnet plates all over your body. And I guess the energy, it's supposed to like heal. It taps into frequency and energy healing. And so anyway, the problem I had was that every time she got the magnets all set up, I then had to go pee. and so it like threw her off completely, and she had to like keep doing it, and she just was not happy with me. I did Chinese medicine. I did Chinese herbal medicine. So I went into the store, and she diagnosed me. We talked about it. I left with a bag like this big of what looked like roots and grass and dried leaves that someone went out to a forest and just foraged from the bottom of the forest ground. And then I had to make tea with it, and it was pretty gross. Anyway, I tried all kinds of things, which is why in the end, when someone had suggested medical cannabis, I did decide to explore it, because I was open to trying absolutely anything. When you're in pain and your day is directed and defined by pain, you will do absolutely anything to try to relieve it.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose share that, once you find that relief, share that with other people. So let's talk a bit about Madge and Mercer, the brand that you've created, you founded. How did that come about? When did you decide that this was something you're going to commit to and go for long term?
So I was exposed to the cannabis industry for about a year and a half. I worked with someone working on a cultural experiential consumption model. And so I really got to, I got some good education in terms of what the industry was about, and starting to understand the plant better and the opportunities there, and decided that really my interest in cannabis obviously was wellness and health, and not so much on the recreational side. And so I started to do some more research, and I guess I launched it. I officially started to work on it in March, the lockdown, first pandemic lockdown in March 2020. And I spent
lots of time on our hands, right?
Exactly. I spent that year doing a bunch of research and speaking to different people in the industry, and putting together a little team of advisors, and surrounding myself with people who knew better than I did, especially in terms of the plants and the ingredients and the magic of it and so forth. And so, and I don't say magic in a light way. I mean more in terms of, what makes it tick and how it works with the body's endocannabinoid system and so forth. And and then in the summer of 2021, I launched in the Ontario market. I had submitted my products to the Ontario government, and I launched within the recreational market. So I actually did it the opposite way that many other businesses do it. I started and that's probably because I started when recreational cannabis was already legal in Canada. So I started with recreational, and then more recently, actually, then went into medical. And so I really felt that, given my experience with pain, I became this like advocate. And so every time I met a woman in my age group, who was dealing with perimenopausal issues or menopausal issues and had all these symptoms like stress, anxiety, chronic pain, inflammation, libido challenges, sleep issues, I'd always say, try medical cannabis, try cannabis. And their response was exactly the same as mine had been in the beginning. Oh no, I don't like smoking. I don't like the smell of smoke. I don't want my kids to smell it. I get really paranoid. There were all these reasons as to why they didn't want to try it. And I thought, well, this is crazy because this is something that can really help them. And maybe it's really about going back to design thinking. Maybe it's really about creating products, a brand, a language that can speak to women so that they feel that there's some authenticity behind the brand. There's some trust, and they feel more comfortable trying it out.
Yeah, I mean, I know because we put a post on social media about obviously the work that we're doing together with Madge and Mercer and with Grow, and I suppose one of the responses was quite an innocent question of what makes a cannabis brand focused on women's health? What are you doing differently, I suppose, to other cannabis brands out there that develops that focus? You sort of explained it there, but can you give us some examples, some detail on that?
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, our products can be used by men too. Like that, there's no issue there. But what I'm saying is let's create products that particularly are designed to address the challenges that women face. Like here's an example. I masked the cannabis taste with lemongrass and ginger because the research I did among women said they hated the taste of cannabis and it tasted like weed water. So I masked the taste. Many of the oils when I started were 1-to-1. And the reality is, if you have not, if you're, suffering from cancer, or dealing with cancer treatments, and you are debilitated and you are in a state where it really doesn't matter if you're high or, not able to function, then that's one thing. What I wanted was to create a product that created calm, that provided a woman with an opportunity to go about her day, because that was what I was doing. I had to drive my kid to school. I had to go to work. I had events at the end. I had to make dinner. Like I had all these things that I had to do. And I needed I needed to disassociate from the pain and to have a sense of calm. And so that was why I created a product that was much lower on the THC side, just enough to activate the CBD as opposed to a 1-to-1. So it's really more about listening to women and listening to what they were looking for and what they wanted, and creating the products and the formulations and the methods of consumption that really would speak to them.
It's interesting that taste is a factor in the way that you've described it, because I mean we have. You called yourself earlier, I think, what did you say? You were the worst stoner or the worst cannabis consumer, and obviously you have the quote unquote, I guess, the best. Those who are the most knowledgeable, those who are the most passionate about cannabis. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best thing, but it's their way of doing things, and the taste is so important to them that it tastes like a certain thing because that reflects the effects that they're going to get. But I think it's really interesting that you're highlighting a whole nother demographic that really is not. It's not interested in the cannabis-y part of cannabis. It's the symptom relief and very little else, really.
That's right.
Fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Do you find smell as an issue as well as taste? Do you find the smell of the product and the sort of social stigma of that an issue?
Yeah, 100%. So the product that we created is a disposable CBD vape, and it's a 4-to-1. So it's very much higher it's 60% CBD and 15% THC. Just enough THC to activate the CBD, but really not designed to get you high. It's really more about creating calm and addressing things like anxiety and stress and chronic pain, sleep, things like that. And so because it's a vape, there is no smoke, there is vapor, but there isn't a cannabis smell to it. And this taste of it is menthol eucalyptus, and that's the terpene profile that it would be found within a cannabis plant. And so I designed it that way, again, intentionally, because again, if a woman is working and she's in pain or she needs to run out, she could just take a hit of it. She's not going to smell like it. when she comes back in. She's at home, her kids are crying, she's trying to make dinner, she's in pain, she can run into the bathroom and take a hit, no one's going to notice. So it really is about creating a product that's discreet and seamlessly integrates into her daily life.
Yeah, discretion. I mean, it's so just before we came live and started recording today, I went out on social media. I put a post out to women in general in a social media forum that's mainly people talking about prescription cannabis. And I said, what's it like? Very open-ended question. What's it like being a woman and a medical cannabis patient? I just want to read you a comment from that after what you've just said, just because I think we're going to have viewers saying, oh, the smell's not a big deal, people need to get used to it. And there'll be a lot of people who say, oh, the part of the destigmatization and normalization of this is getting used to the smell. But I just want to read this comment and also get your response to it, if that's right, because I think this is, and I hear this again and again from different people. So this is this woman talking. She's a woman, I would say 30s or 40s. She's a prescribed cannabis patient. She says, this is a very upsetting subject for me. I was hoping being a legal medical cannabis patient might give me the confidence to tell other mothers, but it has not. I have to hide my medical cannabis prescription. I shower, I change, I use lots of eye drops, I use perfume to hide the smell of my medical cannabis usage to other parents. But still, once they know, they act differently. They cancel play dates with my children. She says it's sad, it's upsetting. So despite going legal, she still, worries about other people, and just, that she's going to come across people that don't understand medical cannabis. So that need for discretion is there. And I think until wider society has gotten over that, and I respect the patients who are out there and saying, look, normalize the smell, normalize cannabis in general. But until that job is done, there's going to be people who don't want to fight those battles, and I think we need to cater to them. Is that a fair assessment? How does that resonate with you, that comment? Is that something that you can?
I mean, that's so unfortunate. I mean, if she was on hydromorphone, nobody would care. They wouldn't be canceling play days. Like that's just so crazy to me that's the response. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, yeah, in the interim, I suppose it's going to take a while until people accept it for sure. There is still that stigma.
Is it different in Canada? Do you think?
Yeah.
I suppose what I'm hoping to hear is that in Canada we don't have that problem so much. People are more used to the smell. It's less stigma. Or do we still have it somewhat? Do you think?
Yeah, I would say that it is better than it was. However, there are so many different ways in which to consume cannabis now in Canada, like legally. So you have vape products, you have edibles, you have beverages, you have gel caps, you have oils. So you don't actually have to smoke it. And, the reality is that is preferred by many people. So, I mean, for the wellness customer, I mean, the regular pot smoker, for lack of a better word, they don't care. They're smoking weed, and that's cool and that's great. But generally, for the wellness consumer, they are looking for products that are more discreet and more like a health product, right? So for example, like in the morning, you're making your smoothie and you're putting in your collagen and your blue magic and you're putting in your CBD. Like it becomes integrated into your wellness day and into your wellness toolkit. So I think, there is an evolution. I mean, for this person who wrote in, I mean, she might prefer to smoke it, and which is fine and great. And if people can't accept it, that's just too bad. I mean, and it'll take a little time. But I mean, there are other ways in which to consume.
Yeah. I imagine she'd be vaporizing it, but I think even just the knowledge, I suppose that I think we have parents who go into school and their child will say, their child will be getting education about drugs. Obviously, it's illegal here, so the school's saying cannabis is bad, and they go home to their parents, and their dads or mums got a prescription, and then there's that conflict and that sort of
So that probably
society
still
saying
happens.
one thing and then mummy saying another.
Well, that probably still happens in Canada as well. I mean, I'm sure they'll say that it's legal. But it's like alcohol. Like it's legal, but is it good for you? Like that's sort of the question that would be posed. I can only use my own personal experience. I mean, my daughter, when I started to use cannabis, my daughter was probably 6 years ago. So she was like 12. and or 13, and I just explained it to her. I just said, I'm not well, and this is the kind of medicine that I'm using. And I think that's just the way it needs to be positioned. Like it's a medicine. I mean, a
How did
medicine.
she respond at 13?
She was cool with it. I mean, she had no issues. I mean, she thought it was cool, and she couldn't wait until she was 19 to use my products.
Brilliant. Hopefully she doesn't have any health issues of her own at 19, but certainly if she does, at least she's got a mother who knows where to go and what to use.
That's right.
Do you find with the focus on women's health, do you find you get a backlash about that at all? Do you get, I know in I guess on social media in general, in the wider discourse of society, the sort of feminist movement gets lumped into political correctness, as does the sort of LGBT movement, all these other things. Do you get that because you're so focused on women's health? Is that something you experience at all, or is that
Backlash
no,
in
not
what way?
something? In the sense, I suppose it's what happens in the medical cannabis space. I suppose in the UK is if it's such a broad church. There's so many patients from so many different demographics that and Josephine, who's on the back of this call, will spoke at an event in November about niche marketing. It's a great clip. I'll try and put a clip on the podcast so we can see what she's talking about. But essentially the idea of you need to hone in your marketing. You can't just say cannabis, come and get it. You've got to say, look, you've got to think about what the needs are of the women's health market, of the young men with mental health issues, of the various different demographics.
Right.
You can't hit everyone, but inevitably, if you niche down your messaging, the other demographics are like, oh, why are you focusing on that? Why is that more important than me? And do you find you get any sort of backlash like that at all?
Well, the only time I had issue was actually when I first started the business and I was out raising money, and I had men say to me, "I don't understand. Why are you focusing just on women? Why don't you do something for everyone?" And I said, "Well,
Yeah.
but that's the whole point of what I'm doing. I'm really trying to create something that speaks to women, because I don't believe that the other brands do."
Yeah, good answer. I think that's it's one of those things. Why should you have to have a lengthy defense of what you're doing? I think I'm absolutely with you that we need to niche down and focus in. And I've been an advocate for that sort of mindset because for a long time, when I was an advocate myself in medical cannabis, the criticism was, why are you fighting for prescription access? You should be talking about grow your own or decriminalization or this thing or that thing. But the
Right.
broader you get, the harder it is to get any progress or to focus on individuals and their needs. And I think that my argument is always, if we're honing down onto a specific demographic, it's because what we're actually doing is we're going to deal with people at an individualized level, on a holistic level. It just happens to be we can't do that for the entire world at once. So we're going to look at this cohort, and that doesn't mean we're deprioritizing others. I suppose that's the bottom line of it, isn't it? It's interesting what you said about raising money for this. And have you found that difficult at all as a female-led brand? Have you found navigating the sort of cannabis world more difficult, perhaps, than the previous work you were doing in design? Is it, I suppose as a woman in this space, it feels very male-dominated, the cannabis world, from the events that I go to. Is it different to other areas in business because you've got this experience in these other areas?
Yeah, I mean, I came from a very female dominated industry, and certainly cannabis is male dominated. There are definitely way fewer female CEOs in cannabis. I don't know if I've faced challenges because I'm a woman, or I've faced challenges because I represent a niche part of the industry. In Canada, again, because recreational is legal, the majority, I spoke to someone the other day who said that 85% of their sales are to men looking for high THC products at the cheapest price. So when it comes to wellness products, I'm niche. And so even on medical platforms, you still see a lot of high THC product on medical platforms. So I think that that's been a challenge. I mean, in Canada, there's a movement now to decouple CBD from THC, and looking at it as a cannabis health product and having it available through pharmacies. And that to me will be a big game changer, because I think it will destigmatize it and will also mean that it'll become a much larger and more important segments of the industry, and have more, obviously more financial value overall. But yeah, I mean, I can't say that it's been hard because I'm a woman. I just think it's hard because of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it's more hard because it's cannabis, perhaps.
Yeah, it's cannabis. It's, and sure, like when I meet people from my previous life and I tell them what I'm doing, they're like, "What?" Like they don't really understand like what or why or how I got here. So, but that's fine. It gives me an opportunity to tell my story and pitch my product.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I get the same thing quite often. I'd be, coming across people who I went to school with, and when they find out what I'm doing for a living now, it's always a sort of jaw drop. I didn't even know it was legal. How does that work? Yes, it's a very unusual experience.
Yeah, or then they make like stupid jokes like, "Oh, I can imagine like, what your meetings are like," and they all start like pretending to smoke a joint, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I saw
Or they ask for free samples.
Yeah, I saw a post on LinkedIn. It was so funny. This woman wrote, "No, it's not okay to haul on your vape in the middle of an interview with a cannabis brand." It's like,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. I guess if you asked permission, maybe if you really needed to, if you had symptoms, but yeah. Have you ever needed to in the middle of a business meeting? Have you ever felt like, oh, I actually do need to medicate? Excused yourself, gone out
Well,
and had a vape, or
yeah, generally I do it beforehand. Like at a point in my career, I was doing a lot of public speaking, and
Mhm.
I have a lot of pre-performance anxiety, and so I would do that before I went up on the
Mhm.
stage, to help sort of calm me down a bit.
Yeah, slow that heart rate down. I know what that's like. The old palpitations as you come up to the microphone. Do you think that the wider cannabis culture is a deterrent for other people to take this seriously as a medicine? Do you think
The
the
what?
culture itself,
Oh,
the like the Snoop Doggism of it, the Cheech and Chong side of things, that whole side of things, I think it's yeah, I guess the fascination for me that you're doing a medical thing in a country where it's fully recreationally legal. Yeah, that must be difficult to get it taken seriously.
yeah. It's like, I mean, it's like what I said earlier, like my hesitation in trying it, and the women I speak to, who, like especially in the beginning, who there was still a lot of stigma around it. But for example, like I was at an event last week, and it was a women's ski day, and I was talking about my products with them, and I was really amazed at how many of them were tapped right in and very comfortable about the idea of trying it. Whereas I would say 2 years ago, it was much more difficult. So there definitely is. Another thing too is I think being available medically, destigmatizes it recreationally. So the more people that
Mm.
use it on medical platforms, and the more it gets, like for instance, even this partnership with Grow, it was amazing how many stores here contacted me and were like, "Congrats on that. That's really cool." And then wanting to carry it because now they know it's,
Mm.
being accepted on a medical basis. And also, unfortunately, Canadians are really bad in terms of celebrating their own. It's a bit of the poppy theory. I mean, we don't actually celebrate our own until we're famous somewhere else. And so I think that goes also with categories. So, the fact that it's celebrated medically, now it'll, be more successful recreationally as well.
Interesting. Do you think being in the UK adds to that clout? Do you think the UK particularly is an area where medical brands, there's the value in launching, I suppose, and that reputability of that? Or do you think it's just, maybe, moving out of North America into Europe?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the UK is seen as a big opportunity in terms of the future of medical cannabis. And I think the UK obviously has a very strong and respectable health system. And so I think to be accepted there gives the brand and the industry at large a lot of credibility.
Yeah. Well, we're obviously very, very happy to provide that platform, and very, very happy to have the expertise that you bring from across the Atlantic. Particularly, I mean, God, I'll ask any of the patients at the moment, who are the market leaders in this, and they'll name Canadian companies every time here in the UK. So it makes a lot of sense to me to have Canadian medicines being talked about in UK healthcare circles, normalizing this at an international level. Obviously, it's a huge boon. It's a huge string to our bow to have a brand like Madge and Mercer, working with us. I'm very excited. I know we've got lots more planned for, around the sort of area of women's health. We've got stuff we're going to do on social media. We've got stuff we're going to do behind the scenes. What are you excited about for 2024? What's next for Shauna and for Madge and Mercer?
Well, working with you guys. I mean, we talked a lot. I mean, we've been talking a lot about other new products that we can roll out for the UK market, the UK medical cannabis market, that I'm really excited about. Because I have a number of formulations that I've been working on and excited about, and I think they would do quite well in your market. So I'm really excited about that. And also just getting our products out onto more medical platforms in Canada. That to me is really a big priority. And I'd love to start looking at other global markets too, like Germany, Australia, because I think those are markets that our brand could do quite well, and our products would be well received there as well.
Brilliant. Well, I thank you so much for your time, Shauna. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. It's fantastic to hear about the work that you're doing. Like I say, very excited about what we're going to be doing together throughout 2024. Any final thoughts before we close off the podcast?
Just that, give medical cannabis a chance. It's really give medical
us a chance.
That's it. It is. It's proven to help so many people, and there's a lot more that it can do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for your time and being a guest on the show. And we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for watching. My name's Alex Fraser. This is Shauna Levy from Madge and Mercer, and we'll see you on the next episode of Grow Conversations. Thanks very much.
Thank you.